Talk and Rock Radio, where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
Welcome, everyone, to Talk and Rock Radio. My special guest today is the voice of a legendary singer whose hit song rose to number 3 on Billboard's Hot 100 in early 1963. Joining me from Los Angeles, California, was the lead singer for the Cascades, John Claude Gummoe. How you doing, John?
Oh, I'm doing fine. For an old man, I'm doing great.
That's all you can ask for, right?
Absolutely. I'm just happy when I get up in the morning.
Well, John, I major fan of the Cascades all these years, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about, well, your life story as being a musician and how it all started for you. I guess it was around 1960 or so, I guess, right?
Yeah, I was in the Navy.
Yeah.
And I flew courtesy of the U.S. government from my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, flew out to San Diego where I went through basic training. And when I got out of basic training, I went aboard a ship, the USS Jason, which has long been decommissioned. And it was on that ship that I began to meet people that had a common interest in music. And I had never performed or never been anybody who even thought of myself as being someone who would ever wind up performing or recording, for that matter. I mean, I knew I could sing, and I used to do a lot of it in my car when I was a teenager, having all my buddies telling me, "Shut up, John."
Well,
so it was, that's where it all started, and I have special feelings for the people aboard that ship that I got hooked up with, who helped me rise above my insecurities and my feelings about going on stage, and literally kind of pulled me up there and almost made me do it. And after I did it a few times, I thought, hey, this is kind of fun.
We'll talk about the Silver Strands.
Well, the Silver Strands were kind of I would say a country rock shipboard band, and they were the drummer in the band, Dave Wilson, who's long passed away. David and I used to go into his office, and Lenny Green, who was in the engine department, he would come in with his guitar, and we would sit and sing Everly Brothers songs. I mean, God bless the Everly Brothers. They really were a big influence on my early years, and the Silver Strands got me, and the Silver Strands eventually became. There was another group formed called the Thunder Notes. And the Thunder Notes were doing mostly instrumental music, but some singing. Because David, the drummer, was a good singer, and eventually they got me up on stage to sing with Dave. And we would sing Everly Brothers songs, and before long I was doing solo things, Bobby V songs, songs by some of the the young male singers of the day, and I was, and eventually we were working, 4 or 5 nights a week, and it was there were times we even flew out of San Diego and did shows, and I had to be back to the ship at sharp Monday morning, 8 o'clock.
Wow!
And it was sometimes very, very close.
You all did a recording. I think you did one recording called Thunder Rhythm, right?
Yes, we did, for Bob Keane at Delphi Records, I think it was. Bob's died now.
Yes.
And that was the same label that had Richie Valens.
Well, and also, Bob Keane, I've got a personal attachment to that, in that our local famous group, the Bobby Fuller Four, were also working with Bob Keane out there at that time. Well, in 1966 is when he met his demise.
Oh, okay.
With tragic loss of Bobby then. But I know a lot of stories about Bob Keane. I'm sure you probably do as well.
Yeah. Well, he also had. Do you remember that song, "Those Oldies But Goodies Remind Me of You"? That was one of his records.
Oh, okay.
And I forget the name of that group that did it, but that was a big hit for Bob Keane's label. And it was the thing we did was called Thunder Rhythm, and on the other side was a song called Payday, and they were both instrumental, and they didn't really. I don't think they promoted it very well, but I don't think it was such a great record anyway. In retrospect, thinking back, I don't think it was. I really don't think it was meant to be a hit, but at least it got us started, and we. I don't even remember how we got involved with Bob Keane. It's been so long.
Yeah.
And but it was a fun experience, and we went back to the drawing board, and by then we were doing a lot more vocal stuff, and we would get together a lot of times during the week when we had time, and go into the guest house of our bass players. The bass player's family had a guest house out behind their house, and we turned that into our rehearsal studio, recording studio, and we had an old Webcore tape recorder, and we'd go out there and make demos on this thing.
Sure.
And they were bad. I mean, these demos were not that great. But it doesn't take much for somebody, like the first person who heard these demos, aside from our manager, was Barry Dvorzan at
Valiant Records.
Valiant.
Yeah.
Yes. And he saw something there that a better demo wouldn't have made much difference. He just
he saw the raw talent.
He saw the raw talent, yeah. And we got together, and he said, there was like 30 songs on this tape we submitted to him. We got together with him, and he said, okay. He says, who wrote this song, There's a Reason? And so I told him I did, and he says, and that's you singing, right? And I said, yeah. And he says, okay, from now on, you are the new lead singer. And he said, we want to record There's a Reason, and there's another song on here called Rhythm of the Rain, and we want to record that. And he didn't pick any of the other things that the other guys had written. So I mean, literally, I fell into being lead singer of the group. And like I said, at that particular point, we were called the Thunder Notes.
Yeah.
And he immediately said, he says, that name, he says, is not, he says, I don't like it. And he says, we got to change your name. So we were there in his home over in the, I don't know, someplace around Laurel Canyon up in the hills, Mulholland Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And he started looking around the room, and we were all sitting there thinking, and he looked over on the kitchen sink, and there was a container of Cascade dishwashing soap. and he said, that's it. He says, you're going to be the Cascades. and that's where the name came from. Initially, a lot of people in the business and DJs, people like that, they thought that we were named after the mountains up in the Northwest.
Yeah.
but we were named after a dishwashing soap.
That has more of a spiritual connection, I think, when, the Cascade Mountains, not some lousy dishwashing detergent.
I know, but it's kind of funny.
It is funny.
I just get a bang out of it when I think about it.
Of course, you were talking a moment ago about There's a Reason. And of course, that was a regional hit for you guys in '62, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we it came out, I think, in the summer of '62, about 2 months before I was discharged from the Navy. And we did a couple of gigs up and down the coast, promoting the record, and it was not very. It was, we got played on the West Coast, and there were people, of course, on the West Coast, like down in San Diego, that knew who we were, and some of them were willing to play the record, and
sure.
And I think it was a pretty good record for the time, and. It, like I said, like you said, regional hit and not much more. But I think it gave the DJs around the country a taste of what the Cascades were about and what they could do.
Sure. And I know you all were influenced a lot by the Beach Boy vocal harmony, which leads me right into what happened soon after, with There's a Reason. Of course, you guys went over to Gold Star Studios in L.A. and recorded your song "Rhythm of the Rain" that you wrote, along with the legendary Wrecking Crew, which had backing musicians, including Hal Blaine on drums, Carol Kay on bass, and Glenn Campbell on guitar. Talk about what that experience must have been like for you.
Being as young and still wet behind the ears, it was exciting for me. I wasn't exactly, I didn't know who these people were when I, recorded with them. And, even Glenn Campbell was not very well known back in '62. Right. He had not had any hit records. He'd not had a TV show, which all that stuff happened for him later. But he, excuse me, he played on Rhythm of the Rain. And
was Tommy Tedesco in on that session also, or was it just Glenn on guitar?
I'm not really sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if Tommy was there. Yeah. And I remember the strings were done by a guy named Sid Sharp. He was the one who put the string players together. Okay. We didn't use a lot of strings. There were strings on There's a Reason, and there were strings on some of the other things, but I don't think there's any violins of any kind or any kind of that type of instrument on Rhythm of the Rain. And of course, the sound at the beginning of Rhythm of the Rain was a celeste and an organ combined. Oh, nice! And and it worked, and
it sounded like rain.
Yeah, thank God for Perry Botkin Jr., who did the arrangement. Yeah. And he's the one that came up with that marvelous figure on the beginning. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, yeah. He came up with that, and it fit right in. And it was Barry Dvorak's idea to open the song with the crack of thunder.
Listen to the rhythm of the falling rain, telling me just what a fool I've been. I wish that it would go and let me cry in vain, and let me be alone again. The only girl I care about has gone away, looking for a brand new start. But little does she know that when she left that day, along with her she took my heart. Rain, please tell me now, does that seem fair? For her to steal my heart away when she don't care. I can't love another when my heart's somewhere far away. The only girl I care about has gone away, looking for a brand new start. But little does she know that when she left that day, along with her she took my heart. that it would go and let me cry in vain and let me be alone again. Oh, listen to the falling rain. Pitter patter, pitter patter. Oh, listen, listen to the falling rain. Pitter patter, pitter patter. Oh, listen.
But it came out, and by January of '63, Rhythm of the Rain had hit the charts at number 80 with a bullet, jumped from 80 up to about 60 something, and then to 40 something, and just kept bouncing up the charts quite quickly, and
Got to number 3, didn't it?
all the way to number 3. And it's a lucky number because Rhythm of the Rain in the year, well, what they said, I guess when the new century came in, BMI did a list of the top records in the century,
Mm-hmm.
and they said that Rhythm of the Rain was the 9th most performed song of the whole century.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
is-
for BMI. Now that doesn't include ASCAP, of course.
Yeah.
And as I remember down that list, "You've Lost That Lovin' Feelin' by the Righteous Brothers was number 1.
Number 1, yeah. And I know this also being a major hit in over 80 countries, and it peaked, I think, at number 5 in the UK singles chart.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite an accomplishment as well, man. That is just really, really good stuff.
It was interesting that when Rhythm of the Rain hit the charts, not only did it go up the pop charts to number 3, but on the adult contemporary charts, it went to number 1. And on the rhythm and blues charts, it charted somewhere in the top 10. And so it was like, one of the few rare records that made it to 3 different charts. And that was kind of exciting. And everybody and their brother was covering the song. I mean, let's face it, Rhythm of the Rain is not something that is difficult to sing. And so a lot of different artists, from all the way from Jan and Dean to Bobby Darin to Neil Sedaka, Johnny Rivers. I mean, there was just so many different covers. And then there was instrumental covers by Lawrence Welk and, Percy Faith, Floyd Kramer, just a whole ton of different instrumental covers. And one of my favorites is by, the Browns. Do you remember the Browns?
I'm not really not sure if I know who that is.
The Browns were the ones that, they had, their biggest hit was about Little Jimmy Brown, and he was probably singing about himself. And I don't know. You'd have to, when you got the time, check it out on YouTube.
Okay.
Rhythm of the Rain by the Browns, and that's Jim Ed Brown, who's had a lot of country hits.
Oh, okay.
And it was country wise. I mean, I had a top 10 hit with Rhythm of the Rain in 1980 with a guy named Jackie Ward.
Yeah.
And Jackie Ward kind of came and went quietly. He had a hit with Rhythm of the Rain, but I don't know that he did anything else.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday about Rhythm of the Rain, and that it's just one of those classic songs it's just timeless. My wife was saying this morning, she said, well, who are you interviewing today? And I said, well, John Gummoe from the Cascades. And she said, oh, I love that song. That's just, she's still to this day, just, it never gets old,
No, that's true. And that first line has stuck in everybody's minds. I mean, in fact, a lot of people think that's the title of the song.
Yeah.
Listen to the rhythm of the falling rain, but the actual title is Rhythm of the Rain.
Right.
But it's quite gratifying to know that I've touched that many people, and that something that I created has become that famous. I mean, there's not a country in the world you can go to without hearing it.
That's right. Oh.
Yeah, I've had fans write to me from places like Cameroon and Syria and places you'd never expect pop music to even be, part of their culture. But a lot of people have heard it.
That's
And
terrific.
I've probably lost millions of dollars from countries. Most of my income over the years has been from BMI, from Broadcast Music Incorporated, and there's a lot of countries that don't come up with any performance money, and one of the worst of them is China.
Right.
And there was probably 5 different versions of my song in Chinese, and other English versions of it in China, and all through the Asian countries. Thailand, I didn't make too much money out of that country, and but all through Asia, Rhythm of the Rain is huge.
Well, later on we're going to talk more about the reincarnation of the Cascades and when you all, got together again and did some future touring in the Philippines. We'll get to that here shortly.
Sure.
The success that you had in writing, I mean, there's quite a few songs that you did. What was the inspiration for The Last Leaf?
I didn't write that.
But you did re-record it, and
yes,
I thought maybe you could
definitely,
talk about what it's about and everything.
Well, it was based on a poem by a guy named O. Henry,
Mm-hmm.
and it had to do with. In fact, I think that's the name of the poem as well, and the lyrics to The Last Leaf pretty much are very similar to the poem by O. Henry, and I would say that next to Rhythm of the Rain, The Last Leaf is one of the biggest thing that people remember from the Cascades, and I think The Last Leaf made it up to about 40 on the charts, maybe not that high. I'm not sure. I thought somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And on the other side, the thing with that record, there was a song on the other side of The Last Leaf called Shy Girl,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people preferred to play that side, so it got split play. And you know what happens to song records that get split play? It also splits up the chart positions.
Sure.
And it if they'd stuck strictly with The Last Leaf, it probably would have gone a lot higher.
Yeah. Another one of your covers that received spins in 1966 was Truly Julie's Blues.
Oh yeah, Bob Lind.
Yeah.
Bob Lind. Our manager got that song from Bob, and it was an interesting song and had interesting lyrics. And of course, Bob Lind was riding high at that time with his big hit of The Elusive Butterfly,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought his writing was pretty sharp and pretty good. And we also did a song of his called Cheryl's Going Home. In fact, I think it was the other side of Truly Julie's Blues. But we started bubbling under the top 100 on Billboard,
Mm-hmm.
and who should come out with that song but Bob Lind? He covered the song himself, and so he killed it for himself and us. And instead of letting Truly Julie's Blues go on, because if it had gone up the charts and made it big by us, he would have made a lot more out of it than by covering it himself.
When you're thirsty and no one will fill your cup for you, and your well-dressed friends don't want you on their streets, when you're so far down the gutter looks like up to you, I will still be kneeling at your feet. I will still be kneeling at your feet. When you can't remember where you left your laughter,
Sure. Well, and in San Diego charts, 1969, here's another rain song that hit number 61, Maybe the Rain Will Fall.
Okay, now, I don't know if you know it, but that isn't me.
Yeah. Who did that one?
Well, I left the group in 1967. I was in the group from 62 to 66, that's about 4 years, I guess, and then I became ill and I went in the hospital. And Rhythm of the Rain had already peaked, and we had not followed up with another major hit. And I was beginning to ponder what I was going to do with myself, and I decided to leave the Cascades. And there was a singer in San Diego who was with a group called Sandy and the Accents.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a little bit of success with, I think they had signed with Liberty Records, and they'd had a little bit of success with some things that they'd recorded, but they weren't doing all that great either. And I think Sandy, who was the lead singer, she was a young gal, and she had a great voice, and but eventually, like a lot of the ladies, I mean, she found herself a husband and pretty much gave up singing.
Yeah.
And but Gabe Lapano, that's the guy's name, Gabe Lapano, came into the Cascades, and I was in the studio when they did that album because I assisted in the production on it and sang some of the background parts. And but Gabe Lapano was the lead singer on that song, and it didn't really, they had, I think they did 2 or 3 albums, that particular incarnation of the Cascades, I guess you could call it. And but nothing ever further happened. And by that time, I had started doing a solo thing.
Right.
And my manager got me a contract with ABC Dunhill, which was a very big label at that time with the Mamas and the Papas and the Grassroots.
Right.
And I did a song written by Steve Berry and P.F. Sloan, and who wrote a lot of things. And I don't know. I don't know whether they just didn't promote it or whatever, but it quietly died, and nothing happened with that. And I then went over to Uni Records and signed a contract with Uni Records, and they found a song for me that they wanted me to record called "Get Around Downtown Girl." You can find that on YouTube as well.
Okay.
And I did that one record for Uni, and that was in 1969, I believe, or 1970. And Uni had just signed Carly Simon and Elton John. And I forget the name of the guy who was the head of Uni Records, but he was a big record man, very well respected and known in the business. And Get Around Downtown Girl, again, quietly died. And then our manager got us another contract with a label called Cream Records. And this was a subsidiary of Liberty, mm-hmm. and was being the CEO of Cream Records was the guy who owned Liberty, Al Bennett, I want to say. Anyway, they the son of Al Bennett had Cream Records, and we did 2 albums with Cream Records, and under the name, we had a group. By that time, Gabe Lapano, he was still working with the Cascades on occasion, but Gabe Lapano and a guy named Kent Morrell. Kent was a singer who came out of the Northwest. He was with a group called the Fabulous Wailers. Mm-hmm. And Kent and Gabe and I, we became Kentucky Express. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes think of Kentucky Express as kind of a cheap knockoff of Crosby, Stills and Nash. I'm a harmony freak. I love harmony.
Me too.
And that was pretty much what we did with Kentucky Express. And there's some really good stuff.
There's a song that I really like, and I'm playing it in the episode here, called "All the Way to Yesterday." Talk about that one.
that's something that I wrote, and when I did a demo of it all the way to yesterday. Wait a minute, all the way to yesterday is a composition that was written by myself and my longtime friend and co-writer Lenny Green, and I think there was a gal involved that Lenny had worked with, and Lenny sent me this thing, a demo of it, and I went into my little backroom studio and I did a really fairly good recording of All the Way to Yesterday, and it wasn't until we went to the Philippines that I also went back into the studio and I played that song for the guy that was our musical director at the time for the Philippine trips, and he was also an engineer and a guitar player, recording. He sang a little bit. His name is Chuck Cruz,
Mm-hmm.
and Chuck has worked with he worked with Richie Furay. He worked with a lot of different. He worked with Anne Margaret in Las Vegas. He's been all over the place, and he heard that song and he thought, oh, we got to do something with that. So we did another new recording of it, and he arranged it, played guitar on it, and we put it on an album that we put out while we were touring and going over to the Philippines a lot.
Walking down the sidewalk in my old neighborhood, wanted so to come back, never thought I would. This is where I grew up, maybe where I should have stayed, back where childhood memories were made. I see all the way to yesterday from here, all the loving and the laughter and the tears, a window to my past as I race across the years, looking all the way to yesterday, all the way to yesterday, all the way to yesterday from here. There's the house I lived in, faded now with time, images of family running through my mind. My mama's in the kitchen and my dad's out working hard, me and brother playing in the yard. I see all the way to yesterday from here, all the loving and the laughter and the tears, a window to my past as I race across the years. I'm looking all the way to yesterday, all the way to yesterday, all the way to yesterday from here. There's the street I lived on, hasn't changed it seems, still just hometown people reaching for their dreams. One thing that I know, if I could live it all again, I wouldn't change 1 minute of the way it was back then, back then. There's the school I went to, K through 6, and the girl I had a crush on that gave me my first kiss. And there's my best friend Willie on his way to my front door. Wish that I could talk to him once more.
That all started in 2005, by the way, when a promoter from the Philippines, there was a story, this is so funny, there was a story in the late 60s, somebody wrote a newspaper article saying that the Cascades had all died in a plane crash.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And I got in touch with, or I don't remember, somehow or other, this promoter in the Philippines found out that that story wasn't true, and he sent one of his people over here to investigate the whole thing. He came over to my house, and he had me sing a few bars of Rhythm of the Rain for him, and he called the promoter, and he says, "Yeah, it's him. And he didn't die in a plane crash." So, and this was in the late 60s, and so he told me, he says, "I don't think you even know how huge the Cascades are in the Philippines."
We'll talk about that.
Well,
I'm really intrigued by this.
Every song on the first Rhythm of the Rain album was a top 10 hit in the Philippines, and probably, as in most countries, Rhythm of the Rain was the most popular. But they loved also The Last Leaf and Shy Girl, and we did a copy in do you remember Johnny Burnett's song "Dreamin'"?
Of course, yeah.
Well, Barry Dvorak wrote that, and he had us cover it on that first album, and that's very popular in the Philippines, and I even hear it sometimes on radio shows here in the States. Our version of "Dreamin'," and a lot of people like it a lot better than Johnny Burnett's.
Sure.
And then we also covered a song called "Got an Angel on My Shoulder."
Mm-hmm.
And that had been done a couple of years previously by a gal named Shelby Flint. And Shelby Flint had a big, top 10 record with it, as far as I know. And but that was also that was something that Barry had in his publishing catalog, so he had us do a cover of that. And the people in the Philippines loved it, and well, like I said, everything that was on that first album was a smash in the Philippines. And when we went over there the first time in 2005, we played at a place in Manila called the Araneta Coliseum. And we played for a crowd of 16,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
But they really had to do some fancy promotion in the Philippines, because everybody in the Philippines was convinced that we died in a plane crash.
Oh.
And they thought, they're just sending over a bunch of guys who are
a tribute band or something.
Yeah, tribute, imitating the Cascades. And so when I went over there a little bit early before we did any gigs, and I had to go on radio and TV and all the different media outlets there in Manila, and sing a little bit for them, oftentimes a cappella, and maybe just with a rhythm guitar. And a little by little, the word started getting out that, that story was false, and that we really were who, they wanted to hear. And so it was quite an interesting process to get them to believe, because people are funny. They hear something that's something that they've heard all their life, and then all of a sudden someone turns around and says, "That's not true."
Oh yeah. While I'm thinking about it, John, I gotta tell you that a mutual friend said to say hi to you, Tom Garrett of the Classics 4.
Oh yeah. I worked with Tom over in the Philippines. Yeah,
that's what he said, and he said make sure and say hi to John for me. So.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy, and
he is.
I guess he took Dennis Yost's place when Dennis died.
He did. Yeah. I've done a show with him already. Two or three shows ago, we did one together, and very nice guy.
Yeah. I really liked him, and I think we just did the one gig, I think, or maybe a bunch of gigs together. I don't remember exactly the circumstances, because it's hard to believe that, a lot of this stuff is already like 10 years ago, because I'll be 85 this August.
Well, you sound like you're 37, so,
Well, you know something, I've never, well, I don't know, I guess for an 85-year-old guy, most people that see me and talk to me and all that, they don't, it's hard for them to believe I'm 85, and if they look at me, they always say, "Oh, you look like you're about 60."
Yeah.
And I don't know if I suppose that's a good thing. I don't know.
That's a good thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I get that all the time too. People say, "Well, you don't look 73 or whatever." Say, "Well, it must have been all that good California wine I was drinking when I was out there."
There you go. There you go. Oh, that's my my downfall. Or I don't know if it's my downfall or my uplifting, but I love red wine.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I
drink a couple glasses every night.
before COVID hit, I was, I'm not an alcoholic. I mean, I was just a social drinker, but I always loved my wines, and drinking moderately, wine's good for you. So,
I think so. That's what they say.
Yeah.
And I'm not much for, once in a blue moon, maybe once a year, I might have a martini, a gin martini.
Sure.
And I like a good martini, and occasionally I like a margarita.
Yeah.
But I have to be careful because I'm diabetic.
Oh yeah, a lot of sugar
And
in that. Yeah.
And I take I shoot up 4 times a day with insulin, to keep the blood sugar in check. And my last A1C was 5.7.
Oh, that's tremendous. Yeah.
Borderline. Yeah.
Well, that's 7.1 is above that is where it's they don't want you to be, but yeah, anything below 7 you're doing okay. So 5 is great, man. That's good.
Yeah, I'm doing something right.
Yeah,
and,
you are.
And but at 85, I mean, it's more difficult for me to get around. I'm having trouble squatting and kneeling, and then trying to get back up again, things like that. And it just all comes with the age I'm at, and because I know just about everybody that I know that's around my age, they all have trouble with things like that.
Oh yeah, they're all getting their knees done and hips replaced and all that.
Exactly, all that stuff. Yeah,
all that stuff.
My knees and my hip. Well, I don't know. I don't know whether it's my legs or I don't think it's my knees or my hips, because I walk pretty good, and I walk usually at a pretty brisk pace when I do walk.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like I said, if I have to get down to look into like a cabinet that's close to the floor, I've got to have something nearby that I can grab a hold of and push myself back up again.
Sure.
And but that's I can live with that, and I suppose I'll be around for who knows. When you get to be in your mid 80s, you're just glad you got up in the morning.
Well, it's a good thing. Back to the music here. There was a song that I heard you do that I really liked, and we were talking about harmonies earlier. I really love the harmonies in this song, and it's called "Happiness." Talk about that one.
Oh, that's interesting. That's something I did in my little backroom studio. That whole thing was recorded right here in my home, and it never got recorded, and it was never. It never, actually was put out for sale. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And I had a lot of fun with that, and because I'm such a harmony freak, maybe I overdid it a little bit, but but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I introduced it to my Facebook crowd, and I'm on Facebook primarily because there's a lot of other artists that also do Facebook.
Sure, me as well.
Yeah, and there's people that on Facebook that are in a position to do things with other people's stuff if they chose to, although that's never happened to me. But that's thank you for that. It's one of my favorite things that I've done.
Have you ever walked in rain clouds? Can you tell me how it feels? And have you walked a canyon trail with your lady? with a puppy yapping at your heels. Have you seen the desert sky at night? Felt a high Sierra chill? Have you made love, my friend, on a bed of old pine needles? Wish you could know that kind of thrill. Well, I know about all those things, so listen to me good and I'll tell you about happiness. Can't you see it's wrong to drive yourself on? Gotta get back to the land and find yourself a piece of happiness. A little bit of happiness.
I just want to say one more thing. When we were recording Rhythm of the Rain in Gold Star Studios in San Diego, where Phil Spector had his wall of sound, and Phil Spector came into the studio while we were listening to Rhythm of the Rain, the playback, and he said, "Oh, what are you guys doing? Cutting a demo for Ricky Nelson?"
Oh gosh! I
just wanted to put in that little thing because most people get a big kick out of that, and if they know who Phil Spector is, and because he was such a famous part of that era.
Well, he was, and I've got a Phil Spector story that I'll share with you real quick. We when we were playing out in L.A., we got to know an all Korean female group that we performed with up in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We would do a show starting at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. They would do a show, we'd do a show, and this went on till about 12 at night. It was we did like 3 or 4 shows each group each night, and we got to be real good friends with the Daehan sisters. These are all, like I said, all Korean group, all female, and anyway, we had gotten to know this group real well and stayed in touch with them, and anyway, so we ended up coming back to L.A. We were touring all over the U.S., but we ended up coming back to L.A., and we were playing out in West Covina at a place called Rubens, dinner showroom. And they, the Daehan sisters were off for a week, and a lot of them lived in Las Vegas and some out in L.A. And anyway, Wani, the drummer, she was going to see her boyfriend, who she wanted to bring to come in to see our group. And so she called my wife. We were living in Newport Beach at the time, and she called my wife. She says, "Sharon," she said, "I'm here visiting my boyfriend. I'd like to bring him in to see the band." And Sharon says, "Well, sure. You know, I was there last night, but I'll be glad to come back again tonight if you want to, bring him." Oh no, we can't tonight because me and my boyfriend, we're going to go to dinner with Engelbert Humperdinck. And Sharon goes, "Well, excuse me, so," but she said, but we can come tomorrow night. And so they came, and little did we know who her boyfriend was at the time, but long story short, and I'll cut right into this. This was Mike Stone, the famous Mike Stone, who took Priscilla Presley away from Elvis when they broke up.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
Mike Stone was Phil Spector's personal bodyguard. He also did a lot of the Bruce Lee type movies, Kung Fu and all these different movies. The guy's a 10th degree black belt and an amazing martial artist. And I bring this story up because he lives in the Philippines. He is an amazing individual, and you can go to my Talk and Rock radio show on YouTube and dial it back to about 2+ years ago. And one of my first interviews was with Mike Stone from the Philippines. And the craziest part of doing that interview, and you'll appreciate this, is that because of the major time change, it's like 16 hours different time zone than what we're in. So we had to pick a time that was good for him and good for me, where we both weren't either one of us sleeping or whatever. So we finally worked that out. But his dojo, where he works there in the Philippines, is right on the ocean, right on the water. People can go to this day and spend time with him for a fee, of course. But he trains them spiritually and in the sport of martial arts, and an amazing individual. Anybody that listens to that show will definitely learn some things that you probably didn't know. But we didn't talk too much about. We talked a little bit about Phil Spector and all that, but and I think we touched on a little bit about Priscilla, I think, but the best part about all that is that we got to meet him, and he came in to see our show that night, and we had a great conversation with him, and a very interesting individual, and he is living in the Philippines with his wife. It's really a pretty neat,
that's great, yeah,
pretty neat life. But
it's living in the Philippines, I mean, it's so much cheaper than living here. Number one. And number two, I mean, if you live in the Philippines and you've got even a small amount of money, you can have a driver, you can have a cook, you can have a full-time house cleaner, you can, have all these things that over here would cost you a fortune, and you'd have to be, pretty wealthy to have all that. But over there, you don't have to be that wealthy to live that kind of life. I thought about buying. They were trying to sell me an island at one point. I don't remember how many thousands of islands make up the archipelago, but it's amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. Thousands. There's many, 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 many. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. You really made your way, John, and I want to thank you for being a part of my Talk and Rock radio show today. You've left your mark, in the golden era of rock and roll, a period of time that I just, I say it all the time. Music in the golden era of rock and roll is so, I don't know, it's timeless. Back in those days, the music was the best, and
oh yeah, I agree totally.
And those of us that grew up in that time, we'll talk about it to our dying day. I mean, it's just the music was so incredible, and I want to thank you for sharing your passion and especially your talent. You are one of the great ones, and I really appreciate you being a part of my show today and sharing some of your stories and your history.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed it tremendously. And anyway, well, thanks so much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.